My name is Justin Gross. I'm the high school principal in Nevada Community School District in Nevada, Iowa. Our building is roughly 430 students, 9 through 12. Our district is roughly 1,500 students. I've been here for 5 years. We run a little bit of our schedule. We're a 4x4 block school, so we run on a block schedule, which has some benefits and then obviously some challenges in any system, but that's our current system. We're a one-to-one school, and we're also part of the competency-based education collaborative at the state level. So that's a real quick overview of our school.
And can you tell us, in what way is your school incorporating a standards-based system?
So at the high school, this is probably our third year engaging in this work, and it began 3 years ago, basically with a teacher and I, out of frustration. He came in and asked, can I take students, can I fail these students, or can I give them an F? And I said, well, what do you mean, can you give them an F? And he said, well, I know they don't have the skills that they need to be successful, but they earned enough points to get a D-. And I said, I don't think it's fair to change the game on at this point, but what can we do differently to ensure that this doesn't happen again? And we kind of introduced the idea of standards-based grading, and he came back and he said, yep, I want to try that. He said, I want to pilot that. I want to work towards that. And worked a lot that summer to learn about it. When he went and saw Rick Wormley that first summer. And so from that, it's kind of just grown from there. I really supported him in his classroom around aligning, all of his assessments being aligned to standards, and then holding kids accountable for learning the standards in order to pass the class. And since then, we've had teachers that have kind of grown from that. We've also sent teachers to Solon's, our AA's 267 standard-based grading conference the last 2 years, and also to see Rick Wormley. And then I went and saw Gusky this last summer, put on by Drake. And so through all of that, we have a group of teachers that has kind of been piloting this, about 8 teachers for 2 years, where they've aligned all their assessments to their standards. They require students to pass the standards in order to pass the class. They work through reassessments, and that's kind of where we're at. So this whole year, we took our entire staff through professional development around kind of the big picture standards-based grading, and then focused in on what are the things that we have to be tight on in a standards-based grading system. What are some things where some loose? And obviously the first thing we need to do is make sure that, one, all of our standards were clearly identified in the classes that we were going to teach on what the grade level, what those expectations by courses are. And, the Iowa core, that helped drive the conversation in our core classes. In our career and tech ed classes, our CTE classes, we really looked at our program of study of our technical skill assessments and used those, as well as some national standards that those were written off of, as to what standards we're going to make sure that our kids know. And then the technical skill assessment in those classes are really the assessment that we're working towards ensuring that kids have these technical skills to be successful. So that's kind of an overview where we're at. So this year we went through and we talked about what do we need to do with reassessments. And we have several standards-based grading, for lack of better, the grading scales that we've worked through with what's going to meet our needs, what's going to communicate what we want, and going back to Gusky's purpose, what's the purpose of grading? And so we identified our purpose collectively as we want our grades to accurately reflect what our students know and are able to do at this point in time. And so with that in mind, the grading scale we're working towards that all teachers will use will be aligned to that. So we're in the middle of it, right? And as I talked to Nathan Ware and Darren Derflinger at Van Meter on where we're in the process, very similar to how they went about implementing at a district level. But I think that what makes it unique here is it was really driven by our teachers, right? Our teachers and wanting to ensure that kids knew the content and didn't just play school well, didn't just do the things and throw points at it to earn a grade and move on. So it's really shifted the focus to learning, what do students know and are able to do. And I think the part that is driving in our schools that our teachers are behind it, right? There's a commitment by a number of teachers to see this through. And to develop a system that works for us here at Nevada.
I don't know if you're far enough along in this yet, but how has this benefited student achievement? Do you have data that supports it yet?
I would not say that we have any standardized test data that would support that. I think, right now it's anecdotal. It's feedback from teachers, it's feedback from students that we're getting because of where we're at in the process. Obviously, our goal with this, or why are we doing it, is to improve student achievement. Otherwise, why would we be embarking on this? I have heard several students, I'll share one example. We had a young lady who last year in the math class that was standards-based grading, and told her teacher, you're the first teacher who's really cared whether or not I learned it or not. Before, they would go through if I passed the test or I passed it or I did, and they just move on to the next section. So it's anecdotal like that, and those things that we're seeing right now. But obviously the goal is to get it where it's across our building and that we can start really looking at our student achievement data, not only on our individual classroom, how many kids are passing and what level they're passing, but also our standards measures. With the Iowa assessments, we administer the plan, or not the plan anymore, but the PSAT, and then obviously the ACT. We'd like to look at all that and see where we're at, but I don't think we're far enough to have any concrete data there.
Part of the module is a document from the Colorado Coalition of Standards-Based Education, and it's about conditions in a school system that would support standards-based education. And so I know you reviewed the document. Thank you. What are the most important conditions in your school that have helped effectively implement a standards-based system?
I think the commitment by myself and a group of teachers to see this through are important. I also think the hardest challenge for some of our teachers initially was really defining what mastery is, right? What does it mean to understand these content at a mastery level? And the idea of student exemplars and writing, our teachers really looked at what is an exemplar piece of writing to show to kids. So what is the content that we really want them to know and understand, and then the commitment that we have to seeing that every kid learns at that level, at a high level. Those are some things that I think have been from the very beginning have helped us move that forward, right? The commitment by myself and some of our best teachers in our building to lead this, to be up in front of their staff and to say, this is important, and to help them as problems have come along. And then the commitment to really defining what we want our kids to know, what we want to understand, what we want them to do. And then what does that look like? What does student mastery look like, the definition of that? So those are some things I think we've really worked hard at initially as where we're at in the process.
Are there conditions that you feel are important and you're working on or need improvement in your school?
Yeah, I think our work with the competency-based education system and alongside with our standards-based system, I think that's the part that we need to work more at, is connecting those overarching principles. And what we did was through our work with the collaborative, the universal constructs of the Iowa Core, those big picture, critical thinking, complex communication, creativity, adaptability, and flexibility, all of those things that are important, no matter what grade or course you're in. We went back to our community and had them define what they wanted to see. We did a crosswalk with the 21st century constructs, and we came up with where ours closely aligned. And now our goal is working with teachers as they develop to make sure that it's not just content specific, right? It's these overarching things that are really going to develop a deep understanding of the content. So that's where we need to work on. I think the principle, like we said, that we started with was, what is our curriculum? Where do we make sure it's being taught? How do we know that it's being taught across our courses so there's not a lot of overlap and it's sequenced correctly so the kids are getting requisite skills? And we started 5 years ago when I got here, diving into the core, looking at that. And through that discussion, it's led us into where I think we have a pretty good understanding of not just with the teaching the course, but the teacher below me, the teacher after me, what's my content? What standards am I ensuring kids know and are able to do? So I think we've got a pretty good handle on that, especially in the core areas. Like I said, with CTE and working through that program of study has been a little bit more of a challenge with them. The other part that we need to work on is this, it's tough to take a kid out of an 8th grade system that's not standards-based and throw them into a high school system that's standards-based. And we've seen some challenges that have, additional challenges with freshman transition because that's currently the system they're in. So we're starting a conversation with our building and our feeder building, which is only one, our middle school, to develop this, at least 512. Our elementary has always had a standards-based report card, but then they come to middle school and it's been back to, grades and largely total points and again, maybe not as clearly defined of what students know and are able to do. So our challenge, I think, is and we started this like our last professional development on Monday, was we had these curricular department meetings and working with the administration of the middle school to get this system, the standards-based grading system, not just 912, but 512. Our middle school building's a 5-8 building. So that's where I think that's our next big challenge to make this not just a 912 building. But in my bill, that's my realm. That's what I have control over, and that's why I think we're a little farther ahead than the middle school. But they're on board, and largely because of talking to our teachers at the high school about, it really is about learning, and that's what we're focusing on anymore. One hurdle we have is how do we make sure we're teaching responsibility, right? That's always the question that comes up. How are we teaching responsibility if they don't grade homework? And so we've really wrapped our head around that we understand homework is practice. But how long do we allow them for reassessments on standards or on papers and those kinds of things? And that's another piece that we're working through. And our system, unfortunately, is still a time-based system. It's still terms, it's still semesters, and we have to work in that parameter as well.
You've given us a lot of great thoughts today. Is there any other advice that you'd like to offer educational leaders in Iowa thinking of implementing a standards-based system?
I don't think it's something you can force on to teachers. I think you have to guide them and get them on board. There has to be, like any change, you have to have a critical mass that's going to help carry the water or float the boat. And so I think by introducing them and just starting with a conversation about what do we want our grades, what is the purpose of grading? What do we want our grades to reflect? Honestly, one of the biggest traction we got with our staff is when we had them go and listen to Rick Wormley, and he really challenges a lot of our assumptions about grading and about homework and about the 100-point grading scale. And after teachers listened to it, especially our math teachers, they came back and they go, yeah, I can't argue with what he's saying about the effect of a 100-point scale. And so that started the work. And then we took all of our staff through a book study, a real quick one. It's by Gusky and Jung, and it was real quick. It was the essential questions to standards-based grading system. It's a real quick overview, right? It's a skimming the surface of a standards-based grading system. But it gave all of us a common talking ground as we got into this that we could build off of. And then as things came up, we'd get more resources. We'd go, let's reach out and talk about that, and we got more information to them. So I think it really has to be a collective effort, but it has to go back to starting one. What is it that you want kids to know and be able to do? And then how do you know if they are able to know and do those things? And then how do you report it? That's the piece, is how are you going to report or communicate that to parents, to kids, and those kinds of things. It's a journey. I don't think it's a destination. And like anything, there's going to be some implementation dip that you just have to get through. But if you keep your focus on, we're really trying to stay to our purpose. We want kids to know and do these things. We want our grades to reflect what kids know and are able to do at this time. And we keep coming back to that. What our grades reflect what kids are able to do, know and able to do at this time. That's would be my advice. You got to kind of stay true to that and keep coming back to that, and don't get hung up in your grade system, like your Power School, your Infinite Campus, or JMC, and well, don't let that be the hurdle that keeps you from embarking on this, because it's truly what's good for kids. Because we've muddled through that. Power School won't do what we want it to do all the time as we're reporting grades, and so we've worked with our Power School person to define that, but we haven't let those little hiccups along the way derail the train, because ultimately it's back to, we want our grades to reflect what kids are known able to do. And if we say we have standards and we hold kids to standards, then how are we making sure that they learn those standards versus just I don't know how to say it, but it's back to your actual curriculum versus your written curriculum versus your enacted curriculum. You want those to align, and if you're not doing it or grading against standards or communicating against that, it becomes really muddy. I don't know, I probably rambled on a lot, but that's kind of what we've tried to do.
No, you've given the instructional leaders of Iowa a lot to think about, and thank you for your time and expertise.